Howdy mates, how are we doing? Here's a first video for today, which is Wednesday, December 21st, 2022, and by the way, just wanted to mention that it is Winter Solstice. So basically that means one of the poles, in this case the North Pole, is furthest away from the sun in terms of the tilt, which is 23.5 degrees. So that being said, winter solstice is essentially the shortest day of the year. So basically after winter solstice, the days are going to progress to become longer. So the southern hemisphere, on the other hand, is experiencing summer solstice. So they're going to have their longest day of the year. Yeah. And then it becomes vice versa every 6 months. So essentially now winter has officially begun. So we're experiencing winter solstice at the 6-mile Cypress Slough, which is a park based down in Fort Myers. This is always a little favorite for me to come over and visit every now and then. Last time I was here was probably about a month and a half ago, give or take. I usually like to come at least once a month. But it's in the name, so where we're walking through right now is Cypress Slough. So we're predominantly going to see bald cypress. So like we could see one right here and thousands of more bald cypress. But the thing is, some of this bald cypress that we're seeing, some of it was actually planted here, as a matter of fact. Not saying all of it was, but a grand majority of it was. Because back in the 70s, there was a group of high school students who essentially wanted to convince the city of Fort Myers, in the form of ballot initiatives, to turn this place into a park. Because at the time, that's when there was such rapid development. I mean, even today, it's still happening at an unprecedented rate. But a slough, though, is characterized by fluctuating water levels. Typically, a slough experiences something called sheet flow. So sheet flow essentially refers to the movement of water. So naturally, water in a slough wants to go westward, because that is essentially where the Estero Bay and the Gulf of Mexico is located. So you are bound to see water that is flowing a bit towards the west, which makes sense. But given that right now that we're in the winter season, we're going to have less rain occur. So water levels are going to drop quite a bit. And so, hold on a second, you guys. There we go. I was just letting a group of ladies walk ahead of me, since I'm really taking my time, which I tend to do that a lot. So as I was saying, water levels fluctuate quite frequently. So that being said, the amount of wildlife that you will see here can change. Usually this time of year, you're going to see a little more wading birds. Of course, dependent on where. They always want to go where the food is located. But it is quite advantageous for wading birds to sometimes have shallower water, as then some of the mollusks are more what you call visible and available to pick out of the water. So it's always about the timing. You know what I mean? But yeah. But what makes today particularly unique too is yesterday we actually had an unusual rainstorm pass through during December, which doesn't really happen too often. But that's why today in particular it looks a little more lush than usual. Typically it starts to, some of the bald cypress needles and whatnot, they start to look a little more brownish, orange, and such. Oh yeah, there we go. Got a giant air plant right up here. This is a great example of a epiphyte. So essentially they use the tree as a base for them to live, but by no means do they act as a parasite to the tree whatsoever. They still have their own way of obtaining food and water. But what makes this particularly fascinating of why we should really care about these air plants, the giant air plant in this case, is they're a type of bromeliad. So, okay. So I know I'm using all of these different terms, but bromeliads refer to a group of air plants. Because, of course, there's all different kinds of genuses that fall under air plants. But with that particular plant that I was just pointing out, that actually falls under the genus of Tillandsia, which is a group of bromeliads. So why we should really care about that is, a lot of us, we love our pineapples, right? I mean, even Florida has a history of growing pineapples. So the common pineapples that we consume, they're essentially another example of a bromeliad that we commonly consume. So it's really cool to think about. That's just it. You may have noticed even at pineapple plantations, they don't necessarily create trees. There's no such thing as a pineapple tree. Instead, the bromeliad in particular just kind of grows on a base, but they do not create trees. I know, SpongeBob. You would be a little proud of that, considering SpongeBob lives in a pineapple house that's all by itself. Oh, goodness. So, okay. I think that should wrap up the video, seeing that this is already hitting 9 minutes. Alright. Take care, you guys. See ya.